all of these things, all of these phenomena, it says, all of these are delusive appearances. Again, delusive. The very way they appear misleads. Right? They lie. Which again, these are all relative phenomena, which means they're totally obscuring the actual nature of reality. They would lead us to believe something contrary to the actual nature of reality. Therefore, they're delusive appearances. And what's their origin? Experiences of conceptual, dualistic grasping. So a brief foray into middle way view. The notion of empty is at least is kind of simple, not easy to fathom, but it is simple. It is the emptiness of inherent nature, a phenomena existing by their own nature, in and of themselves, from their own side, and now very crucially, existing prior to and independent of any conceptual designation of them as being this, verbal and or conceptual designation, that they're already there. So this metaphysical realism is already there, and that whether it's science, philosophy, religion, whatever it is, the truth seekers in this metaphysical realist view are seeking to map, to represent with their theories, theological, scientific, or whatever, what is already there, pre-existing, existing prior to and independent of their theories, their beliefs, views, language, conceptual designation, and then the ideal for many, and scientists vary, we should all know that. Not all scientists are materialists, not all scientists are metaphysical realists. Many are, some aren't, they vary a lot. But within the scientific community, there are many who are metaphysical realists. And so the view, when I was being trained in science, is, according to the view of metaphysical realism, that the whole scientific worldview is an approximation, and the better it gets, then the view I heard was it is asymptotically approaching a perfect match. That is, asymptotically means we'll probably never get to the absolutely complete, perfect view of everything, but we can approach it, at least approach it asymptotically, get closer and closer and closer, which means the reality that's already there will be more and more closely approximated by the view until it's pretty close to a one-to-one match. And the view that had more or less already happened was very prevalent in the late 19th century, when very, very prominent physicists like Lord Kelvin said, we're finished. We're finished. That is, now it's just fine-tuning. But all the fundamental aspects of the physical world, we've got it nailed. Thank you, Newton. Thank you, James Clerk Maxwell. We're done. And so let's move on. Now find other things to do, unless you just like fine-tuning. And that was about a decade before the rise of quantum mechanics and relativity theory. So reality has some surprises for us. But not all scientists believe that. And the ones that I have met who deeply challenge that view tend to be in the realm of physics. Quantum mechanics, quantum cosmology, because that really shook things up a lot. I won't linger there, but as I've said a couple of times in this retreat, the fact that the advocates of quantum mechanics, experimenters, theoreticians in quantum mechanics, see that the old view of metaphysical realism is highly questionable, at least that. There is no consensus. Here's an objective, true statement. There is no consensus among professionals in quantum physics about what it means. No consensus at all. But there's a pretty broad consensus that it's not what we used to think. 19th century metaphysical realism, real atoms, particles, and everything absolutely out there. We're just mapping it. In fact, I think very few quantum physicists believe that when they say it's just not supported by evidence. It's contradicted by evidence. Hence, when you come to that point, then if you meet a proponent of a Madhyamaka philosophy like the Dalai Lama, then in Madhyamaka, they're also questioning that phenomena exist by their own inherent nature. So then you see, well, maybe we should talk. And there's been some very lively, very meaningful conversations in that regard. What it's getting to, not to linger here too long, is that, all right, emptiness, kind of straightforward, true or false, is not that difficult to conceive of. But then we ask, okay, that's how things don't exist. Things don't exist by their own inherent nature and so forth and so on. Then we can ask, how do they exist? Because clearly, the Madhyamaka view is not saying things don't exist at all. That's just nihilism. It's silly. And so the answer to that question is, well, let's attend, just for the time being, we'll stop there, all composite phenomena, all phenomena that arise independent upon causes and contributing conditions. It covers a lot of territory. Nowadays, even space-time is considered to be conditioned by matter, for example. Matter warps, woofs the continuum of space-time as space-time influences matter. So even there's conditionality between space-time and matter energy. And so if we just look at that very large category of phenomena, natural phenomena, but not just physical, mental phenomena, appearances, information, justice, beauty, however many other things there are that are neither matter nor mind, but are still conditioned. Information is clearly conditioned. Beauty, if you see the beauty of a painting, it's conditioned. It arose independence upon causes and conditions. The beauty is not equivalent to the paint. Beauty is not composed of atoms, but it definitely is arising independence upon atoms. So without belaboring that point, so that whole bandwidth, composite phenomena, and that includes us, sentient beings. It said that, all right, all of these phenomena arise as pratyeka samappada, or I will say in English, dependently related events. Events. It's the best translation I've been able to come up with. To point to any one of them, paraglasses, what are you? This is a dependent related event. Event already says that there's not some chunky stuff there that's sitting like a rock in mid-space. Really there. That's how it appears. But that's not true. It's a sequence of events. That's what it is. Dependently related. Okay, dependently related. What do you mean by that? So we'll take the eyeglasses. And, well, it's dependently related because this pair of eyeglasses, the one that exists right here, has arisen in dependence upon a complex matrix of prior causes and conditions. A whole bunch of them, more than we can even imagine. But clearly somebody made it, that was a cause. Clearly there was glass that went into, and that became a prime cause. Here's stainless steel probably, so some steel came into it, and then there were machine parts that were involved, and so we see a wide variety of, there are primary causes that actually became of the stuff of the glasses, but many cooperative conditions, like the lens crafter, he's not in there. But without him there'd be no lens, but yeah, cooperative condition. And so here's the first one, and this is just simple and obvious. Yeah, it's not self-arisen, it didn't come out of deep space, it's not eternal. There was a time when this pair of glasses didn't exist, and this pair of glasses has arisen in dependence upon prior causes and conditions. That's straightforward, finished, done. But now this pair of glasses, this is a pair of glasses, just because it has two lenses. So a pair is, we say, a pair is. Is means it's singular. There are two glasses here, they are. But the pair of glasses is a singular. I bought one pair of glasses, which has two lenses, right? And so this pair of glasses, a single entity, is composed of parts, of course. It has two lenses, and we can see them, two stems and so forth. And none of these, that piece of glass there is not a pair of glasses. These little nose nibs, whatever, that's not a pair of glasses. This is not a pair of glasses. So none of the individual parts is a pair of glasses. But simply, you have all that collection. If you took this apart and put them all, two stems, two pieces of glass here and so forth, all the parts there, just sitting in front of me, dissembled, you'd have to say, well, that's not a pair of glasses. That's a piece of glass there, stem here, stem there. And so none of these individual parts is a pair of glasses. The collection of all of them isn't a pair of glasses. Just lay them out. There's the collection. That's not a pair of glasses. And so the pair of glass, there is a pair of glasses here. That single entity, a pair of glasses, does exist right now in dependence upon its constituent parts. And that is, if you took away both lenses, then you probably wouldn't say that's a pair of glasses, not if it's just a frame. You say that's a frame, but that's not a pair of glasses. If you took away the frame and the stem, you just have two pieces of glass here. That's not a pair of glasses. And so the single entity, a pair of glasses, is right now dependent upon the constituent components that make it up, that comprise it. It's not identical to them, but if you took away all the components, you don't have the pair of glasses hanging out all by itself, with no lenses, no stems, and so forth. So it's called a mereological sum, and that is a single entity, and it's not equivalent to any of its parts, or even the collection of all of its parts. But you take away those parts, and it's no longer there. A lot more could be said about that. We don't have time right now. So is that enough? And a lot of people say, well, that's pretty much it. And that's where the Madhyamaka comes in, specifically Prasankaka Madhyamaka, and says, no, that's not enough. And that is, if you disassemble this, you just put all the parts here, including little tiny screws, and you look at it and say, okay, is that a pair of glasses? And I think pretty much everybody would say, no, you can't put them on, no, it's the parts that you could configure to make a pair of glasses, but no, just individual parts strewn out on a cushion, no, it's not a pair of glasses. Is there a pair of glasses on the cushion in front of you? I just said no, there's not. 2 pieces of glass, 2 stems, and so forth. There's not a pair of, that entity, that single entity, a pair of glasses, is not in front of me when it's disassembled. And then, in slow motion, you start putting it together, until, let's say you've assembled the frame, and then you ask, do you have a pair of glasses yet? But you haven't put in the pieces of glass. You say, no, you now have a frame, a eyeglass frame, but that's not a pair of eyeglasses. It's called eyeglasses because it has glass or plastic. So no, but you're getting close. And then you put in 1 piece of glass. Is that a pair of eyeglasses? Because you can look through it, you just have to kind of, it only works on one side. And you might say, well, no, it does say a pair of eyeglasses. So it's not quite a pair of eyeglasses yet. You have 1 piece remaining, you're about to put it in. There's no pair of eyeglasses in my right hand. And now, okay, let's put it in. Is there a pair of eyeglasses now? Yes. Now there isn't. Now there is. Isn't, is. But wait a minute, nothing came into existence. I just moved a piece of glass back and forth. So when did the pair of glasses come into existence? When you said so. If I should take a little hammer and shatter one of the pieces of glass, so it just had kind of shattered glass there, but it's still there, most people would say that's a pair of glasses, but one of the lenses is shattered. It's a damaged pair of glasses. And then to take another hammer and shatter the other one, it's a severely damaged pair of eyeglasses. But it's still a pair of eyeglasses. I mean, just, you have really crummy lenses. Then if I should rip off one of the stems, so I walk around like that, that's a really damaged pair of eyeglasses. And then if I rip off the other one and just put a rubber band around, you see, that's a massively damaged pair of eyeglasses. And then if I go and blow all the glass out, you're kind of starting to wonder, I think maybe not. Or I'll say, this is a fantastically damaged pair of eyeglasses. But you see, the point at which it stops being a pair of eyeglasses is when you say so. It's not objectively determined. The eyeglasses don't tell you, I exist now, and I've stopped. We need the subjective component, conceptual designation, and that's true for everything. So that's the third element. Take out conceptual designation, you got nothing. So there's an interesting parallel in quantum cosmology. If you'd like to read about that, it's in Mind in the Balance. We don't have time right now, but it is interesting. And it's not airy-fairy New Age physics. It's John Wheeler physics, Stephen Hawking physics. It's quite fascinating. And it seems to me have some very significant parallels here. So that's it. So these are all delusive appearances of conceptual dualistic grasping.